Hey everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at over the next 8-10 days. Today's video takes us to around the 22nd of March, so well into the second half of the month. Signs that we could get a little bit of blocking getting going over the North Pole and over Greenland. The Arctic oscillation, we'll have a look at it in a moment, is trending a little bit negative for the second half of March, so it could turn a bit colder actually as we go through into next week. But not all models are in agreement with this. GCNTO isn't going as far with it as the GFS at the moment. Before we get on with the video, though, just say about the ads. There's links to articles most of the page. Use the gas.com, have a browse through the widgets, any articles that you're interested in. Please click through. You'll be able to go and read those articles. And because you're doing that, because you're clicking through, we'll get a revenue fee on what you're doing. So thanks very much for getting involved. Thanks for doing that. It really pays the website. So thanks for doing that. The competition will be coming to a climax on Sunday. So you've got just a couple more days to get your entries in. All you have to do to win this lovely climate handheld wind meter from MetCheck Weather Instrumentation, metcheck.co.uk. All you've got to do to win that is to send your name and address, email it to gazovers@gmail.com. That's all you've got to do. You don't have to answer any questions or anything like that. You go into the prize draw when you send your name and address through, and on Sunday evening, around 7 o'clock in the evening, one name will be drawn out at random in a video, and whoever is drawn out at random will win this lovely climate handheld wind meter. It's worth £32.50, so it's a great prize, and just send your name address through to gazovers@gmail.com. And you've got to be in it to win it, so you could be another chance of winning it. Right, let's get on with the video, and we'll start off censoring temperature from Hadley. This is provisional up to the 11th of March. Provisionally, we're coming out at 6.4, which is an anomaly of 1.4 above average. So it's been a relatively mild start to March, actually. I think the first half is going to come out around a degree or so above average. So, yeah, quite a pleasant start to the spring. But as I say, we are seeing signs that the Arctic oscillation is set to start going negative. This is the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart. The black line here is telling us where the Arctic oscillation has been. The red lines are telling us where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. Remember, the Arctic oscillation is an index that reflects the state of the atmosphere over the North Pole. It isn't driving anything, it's reflecting what the weather is doing. Now we can see that just recently it went exceptionally positive with the index. We went up there to around +5 in terms of that Arctic oscillation index. So that tells us that it had lots of low pressure up over the North Pole, very tight gradients and strong westerly winds. We are coming down from that now. The black line is trending downwards back towards a more sensible sort of positive Arctic oscillation. But notice how many of these red lines, many of the members of the GFS ensemble are dipping down into negative territory. So by the time we get through to the second half of March, this is the 16th of March, just here for instance, the overall trend is to go negative with the Arctic oscillation. Some members going very, very negative, a few going back up to positive, sort of towards month end, which is just here. But overall, it looks like we're going to have a really dramatic plunge in this index. Once this black line covers this period, it's going to look quite something, the way we will have swung from extreme positive down into negative territory. Notice that throughout most of the winter, and this takes us back to the middle of November, just here, most of the winter has actually been positive with the Arctic oscillation. One of the reasons we've had a relatively mild winter has been a lack of blocking up over the North Pole. But yeah, we're going about as negative as we've been at any point through the winter by the look of it, if these ensembles are right. And this tells us that there is a risk of some fairly significant blocking starting to develop in the second half of March around Greenland and around the North Pole. So these are the 500 millibar height anomalies, and this shows the blocking up quite nicely. These are for the next 8 to 10 days. So this takes up to around the 22nd of March. We've got the ECWF over on the left, and the GFS is on the right of your screen as you're looking at it. It's the red colours here that we're interested in. That's the areas of above average heights, or the area of above average heights. And you see how that vast red area is extending right over top of the pole there, into Greenland and over actually towards the Canadian side with the eastern area. The GFS, very, very similar, again, has this big area of above average heights extending sort of over top of the pole and into Greenland. It does hook back into this ridge in the central part of the Atlantic, so excuse me, that could prove a bit of a buffer to generating some proper cold air coming through. Really what I've got to do is send this area into low pressure depression, get that going through the central part of the Atlantic, and then that would allow the cold air to start coming out of the pole. The EWF actually does bad a little bit. It has this blue area just here, bit of an area of low pressure developing through the central part of the Atlantic, and that's what we need to see to get the cold air coming down from the North Pole via that blocking. Of course, we're into spring now, so I assume a lot of you aren't going to be wanting cold air to come out of the pole. But with that much sort of blocking over Greenland, over North Pole, we are at the very least at risk of some quite significant cold weather coming through if we're not careful. So these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles. We've got the red line here, which is the 30-year temperature average, and we're above average at the moment. We're going to be trending down over the next few days. That's as we pick up an easterly wind into weekend and start of next week. That won't be a particularly cold easterly, but it will be cooler than we've had it. You can quite clearly see from the downwards trend in the ensembles that by the time you get through to the middle of March, certainly the 15th for instance, we're firmly going below the red line, so we are going cooler than average. And as we go through into next week, a lot of scatter. Early on there's a general trend to pick the temperatures up a little bit, but we've got lots of scatter here into say around the 20th of March. This is the 21st just here, and then we've got a lot of scatter. There are several members of the ensemble around that period, say from the 21st through to, let's say, the 25th. In that sort of area just there are a lot of members of the ensemble that are going really quite cold indeed. Some of them go down to -10 at 850 HPA. That's really wintry air coming through. Now, not all members of the ensemble do that, so we have got to take that on board, but we may not get this cold weather coming out of the Arctic via the blocking. Certainly not all models are in agreement that we will. The precipitation spikes coming back a little bit as well as we go into this period where we could get some colder weather coming through, say around the 20th, 21st of March. You are bringing the precipitation spikes back to some degree, and if it's cold enough, it isn't too late yet to generate wintry conditions, so I've got to keep an eye on it. We've plenty of precipitation spikes coming through. If the temperature gets cold enough, we could still get some sleet or snow. So the temperature anomaly from the 12th of March through to the 20th of March shows that we're coming out a little bit below average, and this really takes into account the period with the easterly wind starting over weekend into the start of next week. As I said, it won't be a desperately cold issue, but it will be colder than we've had it, and is a little bit cooler than average. But this doesn't take into account the period that we're just looking at, which is sort of 20th, 21st of March onwards, when we could start to get some cold air coming down from the north. The precipitation only coming out around or a little bit drier than average. For generic charts, here's about easterly to start next week with high pressure over Scandinavia. That's going to be dragging in a lot of cloud. As we go through next week, low pressure will come in off the Atlantic, I think, through the middle part of the week, possibly bringing some rain. And then notice the heights are increasing up over Greenland. So this area of low pressure, quite a vigorous low pressure on Thursday the 19th, a week away, at 995 millibars. That's quite a deep area of low pressure. As that clears through, this blocking here is starting to push colder air down. So as we go through to Friday the 20th of March, the low pressure is moving out into Central Europe. It's opening the door to this cold north to northeasterly flow, and that is bringing proper cold air out of the Arctic. So that would be enough to bring, at very least, wintry showers across the country, possibly even snow into northern eastern areas. Moving through today, 10 Monday 22nd, we're still in that very cold, at least very cold for times of year, northerly flow. The upper air temperatures show these changes. Here we are through the middle of next week, not particularly cold, but as we go through to the last days next week, that's that level of low pressure clearing away to the east, and then that opens the door to those northerly and northeasterly winds on Friday the 20th and into the 21st and the 22nd of March. We're firmly in a cold northerly, northeasterly flow. And there would at the very least be risk of wintry showers coming through with that, and probably some significant night frost as well. So gardeners would have to be watching out for that. Now the ECMWF doesn't really agree with this, not to that extent anyway. So here we are through the middle of next week. Already different. We've got high pressure over country, so about low pressure coming through. That high pressure remains over country to the end of next week, and then by the time we get through to Saturday 21st, just signs that high pressure is going out into Atlantic, starting to push up towards Greenland, and yeah, we could be starting to open the door to a northerly there by day 10. So Sunday the 22nd, but overall it's a lot less intense, certainly with the low pressures around middle part of next week, and also with the extent of the cold air coming out of the north. Let's just have a look and see how cold it is by day 10, and you can see that the -5 isotherm is still really away from the country, just into the very, very far northeast of Scotland, but generally it isn't cold. It probably would get cold around 24 hours after that, but I don't think it would last as long as on the GFS. So at the moment the GFS could be off on a bit of a tangent. It could be going too far with the idea of getting blocking over Greenland and sending the Arctic oscillation down through into negative territory. This could be going over the top because it was so positive. It could be trying to swing too far the other way. We saw on the Arctic oscillation chart, observed the forecast chart, that it's been very, very positive with the Arctic oscillation just recently. It may be trying to swing back too far, the GFS. So the ECM may be the more likely solution, which is that we have a lot of dry weather on the ECM through next week. It's not overly cold, although we may get a colder shock coming through around the weekend of the 23rd, 22nd. But we have got to be keeping an eye on this, because what the GFS is doing is really quite significant in terms of cold weather, certainly for the time of year. So let's keep an eye on it, see how it develops. But at the moment, nothing to be too alarmed about, but certainly it needs watching. Okay, that's it for now. It's JMA Friday tomorrow, so come back for that. But that's all for now. Thanks for watching.